faded, there's frost at my door.
Pedro, are you fully aware now of how much space do you occupy in every Brazilian's heart?
Am I fully aware?
Yeah, how much we love you.
I'll never come to a full understanding so that I can just keep receiving the love.
Oh, that's nice.
I wouldn't want to receive it from anywhere else.
Right. So I am such a fan of the games. I mean, it has such an impact in my life. I am a father of a little girl.
Oh my gosh.
And then, I keep asking myself questions about morality and love and what I think interesting about Joe is we can read over and over the character to try to understand his choices and his relationship with Ellie and everything around his world. I know that I can disagree on the morality of many of Joe's choices, but I can't take myself off his shoes as a father. So how do you think about that?
I never expected that within gaming you could play something that would unfold, that the further you go, the more of a story reveals itself, and complex, dark, human story, and that really makes you question ultimately what you're capable of. It's always an interesting question that you want to ask yourself: what are you willing to do on behalf of those that you love? A lot of the time, those answers, especially in a post-fungic cordyceps apocalypse, those answers are very dark. He is not somebody that I could judge. I could only understand to be able to play him. It doesn't necessarily mean that I would do what he does, but I have to understand what he does. And it isn't hard to understand, I think. Who knows what we're capable of when faced with losses that are unimaginable to us. And especially if that unimaginable loss is going to happen to you again. And is that Tatooine?
Oh, that's a
different show. Bounty droid.
Gabriel, I love that Joe and Tommy, they're brothers, they had the same upbringing, but when everything goes to hell, they part ways in such different manners, right? And I was trying to understand what makes Tommy such a different character than Joe, and maybe it's lost. It's such an interesting path that they follow, and how was your understanding of this different perspectives between the brothers?
Well, I have a brother myself, different fathers, of course, but we have the same mother, obviously. But you could have siblings who are born of the same mother and father, the same upbringing, same place, and then vastly different perspectives on life and their personalities. I think Tommy, he processes conflict and danger in a certain way. Seeing the monstrosity of war and the horrors of war, he is more equipped, I suppose, once the world does go to shit, to respond in accordingly. Joel and Tommy's experience, as you'll find out in the show, and if you play the game, Joel has a lot more that he's responsible for, and so he has a little bit more of a stern kind of demeanor, and Tommy is a little bit more free spirit, more playful spirit. And I think that is in response to his past experiences as a soldier. He's kind of one of those guys that comes back from those that came back from Vietnam and just became hippies. He's more fluid in the way and he responds to the world. Joel's a rock and Tommy's water.
There's a place for you here.
I don't have any way to describe how impactful The Last of Us was in my life. I think I got to this question of what's The Last of Us is about. And I want to know your perspective on it, because I think it's how much humanity are you willing to trade for survival, right? So what's your take on it?
The filter that everything went through when we made both the game and the show is the unconditional love a parent feels for a child. And the beautiful things that could come out of that, and the horrific things that can come out of that. And then the show, ultimately is about love and all these relationships and the different permutations of love.
I'm gonna get emotional over
I love that Marlene is a character in which you change your perspective. I mean, Neil makes you think of her this way, and then you start to think about, okay, is she wrong in this? No. And how was it for you, bringing your first portrayal of the character into the screen?
Was initially very hung up on physically becoming her, honestly, because I think I had some fears of whether or not I was elucidating it and letting it manifest in a way that really honored what people saw, but it's not about that. It's about who the woman is. And we were just talking last night because I was so astonished by the show art, and Neil caught me because he's like, you talk about her as, in third person, and I was like, yeah, because that's her weight. I was looking at the art and the capture of the weight of the world being on her shoulders, really in a making a decision that was in the fabric of her being, denying who she was to become and make the decisions of who she is now and what she feels the mantle is on her shoulders now after everything that she has been through, and honestly honoring what her purpose is in this ripped up, torn apart, desolate world. Who is she and what is she supposed to be doing? And that is completely in opposition to who she was, things she meant to honor and love was in the past. And that is a very difficult thing to do. And I think just as human beings, as we evolve and we grow and we see the world through different eyes, it's very extraordinarily human and heartbreaking.
Yeah, and Neil, I think this game came out on the super hype of zombie culture, everywhere going. And then the infected and the clickers, they're such a new view and such interesting because you're based on, the fungus of the cordyceps fungus. It's so creative. But even so, they are just a way for you to go on with the story because the story is ultimately about humans. I mean, I was going to bed thinking not about the threat of the clickers, but, the less of us who we're losing our humanity to this. How was this relationship into bringing this broken world, but even so bringing a human story out of it?
One, I'm a huge fan of the genre, going all the way back to George Romero, and there's some history there with George Romero and the inception of this idea. But there's this just storytelling kind of principle, which is the more pressure you apply on a character, the more you see who they really are. So to me, the infected are a vehicle towards putting characters under a lot of pressure, so you could see who they are and bring out the human drama from that. But they're also cool. Since back at Naughty Dog when we saw Planet Earth, and you saw the idea of a cordyceps, a fungus that could burrow its way onto insects' mind and change their behavior in this really horrific way and turn them into literal zombies. How has no one used this as a backstory for a zombie story? And it was also important with infected, the monsters I think would help differentiate them and differentiate the apocalypse in general. I remember when Last of Us came out, there were other zombie stories and other post-apocalyptic stories, but a lot of them were drab and monochromatic and just always felt scary. For this story, it was important that the world pulled you in, that there's something beautiful about nature reclaiming our domain, right? You're seeing trees and vines, and it should feel like I'm on a hike and I'm in the middle of a street. Conceptually, it's horrific. Yeah. Visually, it was important that it was beautiful, that it has all these colors and shapes and the way they're kind of growing in and around each other. That's something that was really important to capture and really important to translate to the show.
Every character has this relationship of how much humanity I'm willing to trade for survival, right?
Right.
And Tommy is in war mode, so.
Right.
I mean, I don't have time to be human. We need to survive, and
right.
Because the soldier background, and
yeah.
Do you think that this is what a constant theme throughout the characters?
Yeah, I think that's how people respond to the world when resources are limited and humans become the animals that we are in terms of our nature. And I worked with this military consultant on Terminator. His name's Jack, and Jack was an Army sniper, and I called on him a lot for information about his experience because that's obviously Tommy's experience as well, as a marksman in the Army. When the resources are low, everyone will turn on each other and you'll see the worst things. It's not so much being afraid of the monsters in our story as it is what are humans capable of when things get hairy.
Yeah, I was about to ask this. In his perspective, the most dangerous things are the clickers, the monsters, or
right.
What's left from human society. Right?
Exactly. So he's well trained and then eventually emotionally and physically equipped to respond in a way that is instinctual. Yeah.
I was playing the game, I went to sleep thinking about it. I mean, it was, oh my God, what the broken world. Throughout the game, we are attached to Joel most of the time for obvious reasons. You're playing with him as a character. But did you have the chance to, expand the perspectives, bringing to new perspectives on the show?
Yeah, that was something that Neil and I talked about very early on, because you're absolutely right. I mean, the gameplay was very much locked to Joel's perspective, or even when it went into a cinematic or a cutscene, it was Joel and Ellie. It never left them.
Right.
We, on the other hand, as a television show, are allowed to leave them, and we do. And we leave them in ways that it was important to us when we explored other characters, other character relationships, that those characters and those relationships, in some way thematically, always fed back into the relationship between Joel and Ellie, which is obviously the centerpiece of our show. But you're absolutely right. Part of this viewing experience for fans is to see more of a kaleidoscopic view of the world.
Ellie is such a powerful character, so beloved by everyone. I think it's because we had the feeling that she had her life robbed from her before she was even born. And I know that the reason is this apocalyptic world, but we can relate because these things happen in real life as well, in war zones or disparities of social classes. And how did you go into her mind to try to understand her perspective on this world?
Well, yeah, totally. She's born into a situation that she had no control over, and you're right, her life in a way has been taken away from her before she's even born, but she doesn't know any other life. So she is aware of the world before her, and becomes more aware, like the first time she gets in a car, or the first time she sees all these things, and it's so exciting. I don't think that she particularly feels like she's missing out, because she doesn't know what she's missed out on. It's just like her life. She's super cool and relatable, and yeah.
I find it so beautiful that you had the opportunity to bring her background from Left Behind. It's so powerful and so important for us to understand her background. And how was this, bringing this into the show to become part of, not an extra thing, but part of the whole show?
Well, Neil and I had the benefit of knowing everything. When he made the game, they didn't have Left Behind. They didn't have the second game. There's all these stories that just weren't filled in, and we had them. So we were able to integrate them naturally. It was really important that, again, for us, when we told that story, that it fed back into the Joel and Ellie story in a powerful way. I love the way that turned out. There are these little differences, there are a lot of similarities, and watching Bella and Storm Reed play together in this, over the course of this crazy night was wonderful.
What do you think is the biggest threat to you, in your perspective, humans or the clickers?
That's an interesting question. I mean, humans can be so horrendous. So clickers physically are the most, I'm gonna cleverly twist your question. So clickers are physically the biggest threat, but emotionally and mentally, humans. Wait, for sure.
I agree.
Thanks.
Did you have a chance to speak with Troy Baker about, building this character as you?
I got to meet Troy Baker, which was really, really exciting and lovely. We were in such a strange location in Canada, a very isolated location. I saw him through a window, and we banged on the window and we waved at each other. And I felt like I collaborated with him before having gotten to meet him, because I did watch so much of his work. It was really essential to piecing it together for myself.
What would you think that is, in your perspective, or maybe on Joel's perspective as well, the most threatening thing about this world, the clickers, or the infected, or what's left of humanity?
The interesting thing, I suppose everyone is just trying to survive, but there is no intention beyond survival as far as cordyceps are concerned. Unfortunately, with people, intention behind surviving can vary, which I think makes them much more dangerous.
I think that goes, the different questions that people ask themselves is how much humanity they are willing to trade for survival, or for love in case of Joe, right?
Exactly, and the scary question of what are you capable of to survive? On behalf of someone or on behalf of yourself? That's the fascinating question that the story proposes. The idea of what is right and what is wrong is increasingly hard to identify because of what motivates people. Sometimes being motivated by love can have the most horrific outcome.
Thank you so much. Have my love. Take my love home with you as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.